664 so to the greenback, and we're seeing a little bit of rand weakness, in fact more so dollar strength, but at the end of the day we're still sitting at levels that we haven't seen since around mid-Jan.
Yes, exactly. The past couple of weeks have been superb for the rand. Rand gaining against all the crosses, most particularly against the dollar. Risk on again, the Japanese fears have dissipated, the PIGS fears have dissipated, all risky assets doing well, including the rand. But we've got down to the 664 level and just maybe stabilizing here a little bit off that key support level at 660. A very busy week coming ahead, so maybe some caution coming in from the market.
Okay, when you say caution, are you expecting a bit of rand weakness?
Maybe a little bit of rand weakness, but certainly not enough impetus at this stage to get through that 660 barrier, which is going to be key. You know, if we go back to the board you put up there, the key movement today was only really in euro dollar. Euro has just been gaining consistently against the dollar over the past couple of weeks, but again is running into some resistance. If the dollar makes a little bit of a recovery, that's going to restrict dollar rand from going lower, and then we maybe go slightly higher from here, but no major moves.
It's so fascinating when you see the way that the rand has been performing. We keep talking about rand strength, but on a trade-weighted basis, we are still down or over 4% year to date. So it's quite fascinating looking at those numbers. Do you think that on a trade-weighted basis, we could start seeing momentum being gained on the local currency front?
Yeah, that's a bit of a strange comparison you're making, because the rand hit its record highs on a trade-weighted basis right at the end of last year. So we're really comparing ourselves to the strongest point. Really the trends have been weakness in January, a bit of concern in March because of the earthquake, but apart from that, rand strength, and it looks like the rand in a multi-month perspective is set to go stronger still.
Okay, can we expect a rand below 6 rand to the US dollar, and is that perhaps something that is imminent?
No, don't expect it, but it certainly is possible.
Okay, well, in terms of what could push the rand to those kind of levels, what are you expecting? So perhaps more of a fallout in terms of what we see through the US. We know it's all about monetary policy and the fact that quantitative easing, big question marks as to whether it is going to come to an end in June. We are worried about the inflation outlook in the US when we've got gasoline prices almost at record levels, the levels that we had last saw in 2008. So the inflation picture very much a big issue for the rand as well.
So what can drive the rand below 6? More of the same. Good global recovery, easy monetary policy out of the US, money coming into emerging markets, money pursuing carry trade flows. Essentially 2010 continued strength in 2011, not much that the Reserve Bank can do about it. Shouldn't be seen as a core scenario. The global economy is now well into recovery. ECB is hiked, the Fed is going to unwind some quantitative easing, but dollar rand below 6 is possible. Probably not likely, but certainly possible.
You mentioned ECB hiking rates, 25 basis points last week. We also saw China hiking rates, and it seems the market largely brushed it off because we have been pricing in a lot of rate hikes through from China. Who do you think is ahead of the curve? Do you think that ECB is ahead of the curve, or do you think that the Fed is behind the curve with regards to hiking rates?
A very tough question. Essentially, it all comes down to commodity price pressures feeding through into inflation. Do you act because of these first-round commodity price pressures, such as the ECB is doing? Historically, ECB has always been very tough on inflation. That comes from the old Bundesbank mandate. And so they're hiking. Do you look through the spike in commodity prices? That's what the Fed is doing, and that's what the Reserve Bank is doing. Which one is behind or ahead of the curve? Very difficult to say. It really comes down probably to whether commodity prices prove to be just a temporary bubble, temporary spike, or whether they sustain at these levels. If they do, even the Reserve Bank in South Africa is probably behind the curve.
You mentioned a little earlier that we're going to have a very big week this week when we've got the IMF World Economic Outlook reports that is starting to trickle through, and we know that we have seen a few downgrades, especially in terms of what we'll see coming through in the US. EU industrial production. What is interesting is we've also got the BRICS summit that is set to take place on Thursday, and the first time that South Africa is going to be part of the BRICS group. Yes,
very symbolic, Jacob. President Zuma going along to the summit. As we all know, South Africa is a bit of an outlier. There are 4 very large economies, but South Africa probably asked to join because of political reasons, representing Africa, being the key country on the on the continent. Does it really make a difference to the markets? No, probably not. No one's going to buy into South Africa. But it does create some real business opportunities. There's a big business contingent going with the president across. They'll meet with other businessmen, a good networking opportunity, and maybe something will come out of it.
More reason for investors to buy into the local currency when we see that we are starting to be part of that emerging market growth scenario.
Well, I think investors look through that. The BRICS are growing very rapidly. South Africa isn't. Investors are a lot more sophisticated than that. They're not just going to jump on the bandwagon. But as you're suggesting, there are some funds that target BRIC countries. If South Africa gets included in that, means slightly more inflows into South Africa, and perhaps because the business relationships, maybe some FDI deals come out of that as well.
In terms of South African Reserve Bank currency intervention, can we say that that is now behind us? Do you think that the SARB is far more worried about the effects of inflation than the effects of a strong local currency?
No, absolutely not. The Deputy Governor made that clear last week. He said, despite all the rumours in the market that the Reserve Bank is going to step back from intervention because of rising inflation, he said that is completely and utterly incorrect, suggesting that they are going to continue to intervene in the currency. In fact, when we look at the reserve figures, that is shown. The more interesting fact was that the Deputy Governor ruled out using capital inflow taxes or exchange controls on the rand. So there's maybe some lessening in what they are prepared to do.
Outlook for the rand for the rest of the week. Reiterate those numbers for us, please, John.
Well, our view at Rand Merchant Bank is that the rand will, in the short term, remain at these levels, so in the 660s, high 660s. Probably the outlook to break 660 is very low. Medium term is still for rand strength. We've got 670 as a mid-year forecast on dollar rand. And our target at Rand Merchant Bank for the end of the year is 7 on dollar rand. Still a very strong rand environment.
Fantastic. John, thank you so much for joining me.